Welcome into Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. Got a lot to cover today, especially with the Cleveland Browns coming up later on from Football Game Plan and CBS Sports HQ. Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, he's going to be joining me as well. But we start today as Deshaun Watson, more news about a looming possible suspension, as well as his meeting with the NFL regarding his possible suspension in their internal investigation regarding the NFL. Josina Anderson, noted NFL insider, said this league source on if the NFL issues discipline for the 2022 season with civil cases unresolved regarding Watson. The source referred to the Antonio Brown 8-game suspension in 2020 for violations unrelated to Brown's pending civil dispute. Quote, an example of an initial ruling and a warning delivered. More could come later, end quote. And that's a massive piece to remember there at the back end of that tweet, given the fact that I know a lot of people have brought up the double jeopardy, and I know that, you know, in the U.S. Constitution, you can't have double jeopardy. Once you get one ruling, that's it. That's all you got. But when it comes to the NFL, they are an entity in and of themselves. So there is a possibility that even if you do get that first initial suspension, there still could come with more possible suspension and more possible actions coming up later. In order to go ahead and break this all down, we welcome in from 92.3 The Fan, Garrett Bush, friend of mine as well. G. Bush, got to get your thoughts on this when it comes to Deshaun Watson and the possibility of the suspension coming down from the NFL.
Well, you know, we talk about, I think we talk about suspensions every single day. So, you know, there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of stuff surrounding a suspension. But I always look at it like this. There's a lot of times the reason we do these things is because you look at what the NFL has done and been inconsistent about before. If you look at the tea leaves and you can look at other people's suspensions like Ben Roethlisberger or Antonio Brown's, one of the things that the NFL does, it loses credibility because they don't get it right the first time. If you go back and look at all these other suspensions, what's the common denominator? Did you have all the information? Did you have all the facts? And did you make a judgment that you could stand on? And so when you say we've made our decision, this is how we're going to move with it, and they slap it down and do what they need to do, you can move on from that situation and go about the rest of your season, the rest of your life, and continue to move on as an organization and as a player. The worst thing that you can do, and I don't think the NFL and a lot of people are thinking this way, the worst thing you can do is if you say, okay, well, let me preemptively you just go ahead and suspend Deshaun Watson because we're looking at the optics. It just looks bad. We just want to look like we're doing something. It's even worse if you come back and one or two things happen. Either you have to give him more games or you have to say, wow, none of these civil suits turned into anything. Now you look like it's an organization that just does things for optics. Now, we know that's true. I mean, that's particularly true across the board. Because there's certain things that they tend to levy interest on, and there's certain things that they don't. I ain't heard nothing about Robert Kraft in years. Jerry Jones is in the news for all kinds of things. They never seem to get owners for damaging the shield. Daniel Snyder is under multiple investigations at this point. He still comes to the office every day. Here's the way you work it. It's just easy. You either wait till the civil suits are done or finished, or you're going to say, look, we're going to wait until the first civil suit takes place next year, and you can suspend them at that point in time next year, and you can suspend them for however long you want to. The problem is you can't come out and say you can't have it both ways. Either you're going to get it right the first time, or you don't get it right. Either way, you lose credibility as a league if you come out and do stuff and you just do it just because you're looking for optics.
Now, Josina Anderson followed this up with another tweet here, and she said regarding on the future of the situation in Cleveland, and the word that she kept on hearing was precedent, saying, quote, you have to look at every single case that touched those areas in the personal conduct policy on sexual misconduct, and that precedent is either the floor or the minimum at that point. And so, G. Bush, looking at that, and especially looking at how the NFL kind of looks at these, I know you mentioned obviously the optics of it as well. The optics of looking at some of these other preceding cases at this point, and the fact that, again, I think that the bigger point in this is the fact that it's the 22. It's the number of the cases that are involved in this as well, along with the actions that are being levied against Watson. So do you think that in keeping that in mind, again, the number of cases will also add on to that possible suspension, at least whether it be immediately from the NFL regarding this situation?
Well, I think here's the thing, and Josina Anderson says it. She says it in a really concise way. You have to look at each individual case. Now, just because you have 22 individual cases, we have to be adults about the situation and say, look, man, I can do two things at once. I can look at each individual case and figure out what merit are in those individual cases. Just because you say it's 22, you could go back to the previous charges. There were 29 charges. 7 of those charges were thrown out. So, I mean, we have to also take in consideration with that, too. So, it goes both ways. You can say there's 22 of these allegations, but you can also say there was 7 false allegations. Now, no one really brings the false allegations because we're at a point in life where we've not believed women so long that now we're to the far right of it now and saying we got to believe every single allegation. That's because we didn't believe women for years when they talked about sexual assault. See, this is what I'm pointing to. It's, hey, you're overcorrecting. All we have to do as a society is say, look, there's a case for a reason. Right now, you have 4 different people trying to decide what punishment is going to be, and you haven't heard any civil cases, right? This is before any words have been said in front of a court of a public appeal. Now, here's the point. Is he probably going to get a suspension? Yes, he's probably going to get some sort of suspension. Is it going to be this year? I don't know. Is it going to be next year? Could be. I don't know. He could get no suspension. The reality of it is, if the NFL wants to make the right decision here, it's not it's not just being the first person to say, hey, you did something wrong, we're going to suspend you, so we look like the hero here. No, it's get all the information, listen to 22 cases, and then figure out if he did something in those 22 cases. Other than that, we're speculating on stuff that we can't figure out, we won't know about, and we're not going to hear till next year. So either way, they can suspend him. It's their league. They've done it before. I wouldn't be surprised if he does get 4 to 6 games, whatever the case may be. But I can't sit here and tell you that's going to be that's the right thing to do without hearing all of the other cases and taking it case by case, word for word, line by line.
Now, G. Bush, there was also another follow-up tweet from Josina Anderson who talked about the fact that in the MLB, they're dealing with their own Trevor Bauer situation. He was suspended for 2 full seasons, which he is still appealing. But she said this, NFL source on Trevor Bauer, quote, look at what baseball did. If people don't think that that's on people's radar, then public opinion matters. You think that the NFL wants to be the organization that says sexual misconduct against women means more to one league than the other? Think about it. Now, with that in mind, G. Bush, I understand that obviously you're going to have the court of public opinion, and I get that. You can't separate the two at that point. But when you're looking at MLB versus NFL, obviously MLB leveled that 2-year suspension for Trevor Bauer. Do you think that should be a part in the decision making when it comes to the NFL regarding Watson?
No, will it? Sure, it could play a reason. I mean, there's a lot of things, and I'm when it comes to professional sports, I've lived through so many different scandals and so many different things where, Major League Baseball trying to pull the high horse, right? Hey, we're suspending Trevor Bauer for 2 whole years. First of all, the players union won't stand for it. They probably won't suspend him. They can't suspend him all of next year. The players union will say something about that. But I mean, I'm once again, I'm old enough to remember where they had a whole congressional investigation about steroids in baseball. I mean, people perjured themselves under penalty of perjury. So Major League Baseball with the steroids era from 1996 all the way to 2007 and 8. I mean, I can't say that baseball is now some sort of beacon of moral. I mean, we have the best hitters. We have Pete Rose, who's not in the Hall of Fame because of gambling on his sport, and he was a coach. I always say this. I say that to say this. It's professional athletics. I wouldn't be surprised if any of this happened. I don't put it past any of them. These people represent, the same sample size that we talk about in regular life. If Major League Baseball wants to suspend Trevor Bauer to prove a point, well, I mean, that's what they can do. But do they have some sort of moral high ground? No, they don't. And it's the same with the NFL. If you want to suspend Deshaun Watson because of these 22 allegations, okay. But you don't have a moral high ground either, because we saw the Ray Rice tape. You had the tape before anybody had anything. And you had to go back and say, well, okay, well, we're never going to let Ray Rice play again. None of them have the moral high ground. It's all about business. The reality of it is they make money. They can print money. Deshaun Watson is in the news now. Guess what? As soon as the season starts, this in the summertime. As soon as the season starts, people will turn to Jacoby Brissett, Dobbs, or whatever the case may be, and people will move on with it. The NFL will make a conscious decision as to how they're going to go about it and what the collateral damage is. People will still watch football because it's football, right, wrong, or indifferent. But we'll see how it plays out. I think they'll be smart to get all the information, make the right decision, and keep moving.
Now, G. Bush, really quick, I want to go out to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sticking with the quarterback room, we had this caller who said that, maybe it's best that Baker Mayfield stays in Berea.
All this stuff on the media claiming how Baker don't want to come back to the Browns, I think it would be the best thing that he could do, especially if Watson gets suspended. But, what the real thing of it is that a lot of people aren't thinking, when you're on the outside looking in, it's a whole different picture. And we all want Watson to be a Cleveland Brown, and everyone in Cleveland is just so intense on wanting him in. But what happens here around Labor Day or Memorial Day that he's no longer available? Maybe Baker Mayfield needs to take his head out of his you-know-what and look at the big picture. The Browns drafted a lot of great people. Baker wants to go, and the Browns organization already made that judgment. But what's the best for Baker Mayfield? It is a privilege to be a Cleveland Brown. Take your head out of your you-know-what, Baker, if Watson doesn't play, and play for the Cleveland Browns.
Now, G. Bush, I don't think that Baker Mayfield's going to suit up for the Browns again. I don't. Like, whether or not Watson's suspended or not, they signed Jacoby Brissett. They signed Josh Dobbs. They cleaned that entire QB room out. And so, at this point, do you see a circumstance or a situation where Baker Mayfield ends up just coming back and trying to work out with the Browns, at least when it comes to this season, if Watson is still suspended?
All right, so let me, man, golly.
I got to throw you the curveball, man.
Let me try to explain this to y'all. Now, if Baker was smart, I'll approach it this way. If Baker was smart, if I was his lead counsel, if I was his agent, I would tell him, look, you got to go back. You got to go see Andrew Berry. You got to sit down with Kevin Stefanski. You got to say, look, man, right now, my trade value is 0. Right now, I want to be a different place. You want me to be a different place. Help me get to that place. Bring me back in. We could do it. Hey, I'm not going to ruffle no feathers. I'm not going to do nothing crazy. I'm going to come in, let other teams get a glimpse of me, throw the football a little bit, lift some weights. Me and Deshaun Watson laugh and joke and show that I'm a good teammate. And then guess what? If I'm still on the roster, they're going to say, what did he actually say to get these guys to put him back on the field? He's never going to play, but I tell him to go back, apologize, let's keep it moving and see if we can get a deal somewhere before training camp. But the reality of the situation is that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen, people. You know why? Because we told Baker Mayfield that he was a top 10 guy. He actually believes that now. And it's hard to change somebody's mind when they believe they're top 10. He believes in his heart of hearts. And guess what? This has worked for him his whole life. He went to Texas Tech. He said, you know what? I'm a walk-on. He got the job. They didn't give him the job. You know what he did? He didn't stay at Texas Tech and say, let's keep going and fighting for this job. You know what he said? I'm going to Oklahoma. He was there. He was a backup. He earned his starting job. It worked for him again. Why do you think that he's going to get to the pros, be the number 1 overall pick in the game, and then be like, you know what? Maybe I am a backup. No, he's not. He's going to pull the same thing he did the last 2 spots. And he's going to say, send me to a new team. I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to start. At the end of the day, it'll be the dumbest thing anybody could ever do. The equivalent of what you're asking the Cleveland Browns to do is the equivalent of saying, hey, my ex-girlfriend, you know what? My fiance, she's out of town. I'm bored for the next couple of weeks. You know what? She might not be able to be back for our date. Let me call my ex-girlfriend up and see if she'll go out with me. Maybe she'll go out with me for the 2 weekends while my fiance's here, and then we'll be all good. I'll just tell her to go away. See, Baker's not going to go away because that's a lose-lose. If he ends up 4-0, half the city's going to be like, oh, my gosh, we got the wrong guy. We need to get rid of Deshaun Watson. See, he was hurt last year. And then if he goes 1-4 or 0-4, the locker room's going to be like, why the heck did you bring this guy back here? It wasn't good enough. You sabotaged our season last year. Now you're sabotaging, see how us go 0-4. You guys don't know what you're doing. You're flip-flopping. You don't know what you're standing on. And guess what? Y'all got to go down. Why would you bring him back in just to do that? When all you got to do is play Jacoby Brissett and hand the ball off to Nick Chubb and go 3-1. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And I hear you. And G. Bush and I are going to take a quick timeout. When we come back, we've been looking on the offensive side. Let's look at the defensive side of the ball for the Cleveland Browns heading into 2022. Mac Robinson here on Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with you.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson in for Dave Bacon today. And let's go on to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. As always, appreciate your submissions. But this caller wanted to bring up the defense and whether or not they played a part in a lot of the collapses this season.
I heard Rich Eisen tonight talk about the fact that it wasn't just the offense and Baker Mayfield who lost games last year. And I'm just kind of curious, how many times did we lead in the third quarter for our defense only to give up the winning scores in the fourth quarter to put all the pressure on the offense? I believe I watched quite a few of them myself, and I think we had the lead quite a few times going into the fourth quarter. So anyway, that's just another slant on things. I know that with the Baker Mayfield deal, God's in control. That's all we can believe, okay? Okay, good talking with you. Bye.
Okay, so we did the math. We went in. There were 9 losses this past year. How many of them were blown by the defense? 3. And that includes week 1 where Baker was still healthy. So of the 9 losses, a third of them were blown in the fourth quarter this past year. But, G. Bush, when it comes down to that, I almost feel like part of that was, the defense as a whole getting used to playing with each other because of the fact that you had so many new faces on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I look at it like this, man. When you talk about Baker Mayfield, right, and we just want to get to a baseline, was the defense playing in games in which they could have played a little better and they gave up some points? Sure, right? But I also go to games where there was no chance for the Cleveland Browns to do anything. You look at the game, and I go to the specific game that we talk about all the time, the New England Patriots. I mean, Baker Mayfield threw for 71 yards, 72, 73 yards, multiple interceptions. They had no chance of winning that game. They had no chance of winning the Cardinals game. They were out of it first quarter. That was done. They had no chance. Well, actually, let's keep it real. There are games where you did have a chance to win, but just strictly on the quarterback play alone, you lost. The Green Bay Packers, 4 interceptions. You can't win. You cannot win with someone throwing 4 interceptions. And so those games are littered throughout the season. Multiple interceptions against the Lions. He missed a lot of wide open guys against the Minnesota Vikings. Here's my thing, though. And I always tell people, it's just not last year. It's just not last year. He has been doing this his whole career. Since entering the league, no one has thrown more interceptions. I mean, that's just not last year injured, right? You know, we go back to a lot of different things, and I always tell people like this. Sometimes it's a body of work. You know, when you to me, when he said in 2019, you know what, I thought it was going to be easy in the offseason. They said, you want to work with a quarterback coach? No, I don't want to work with a quarterback coach. I don't need to. When all your contemporaries, Lamar Jackson, who has an MVP, working with a coach, Josh Allen, who was drafted after you, who leapfrogged you, they've got tremendously better. In those years where you say I took a step back, when then it was the year it was Freddie Kitchens, and then it was the year I was injured, the reality of the situation is sometimes in life, you and me, you get one mistake. You can have one mistake that changed your life forever. Mac, you a young dude. If you go out, get hammered, or I go out, get hammered, and get in a car accident, we're finished.
Yeah.
We're finished in this industry. No one's going to say, hey, man, G. Bush, I loved what he used to say. Man, he has some great stories. Ain't nobody trying to hear that no more. That's the way it happens at the highest level. Sometimes the way the cars fall, you got one opportunity to make your mark in the game. Baker had 4 or 5 opportunities. He'll probably get another opportunity with another team. He just has to learn to take advantage of it and stay out the media with it. Because if he wouldn't have said certain things, and if he would have sat down and not went out there and tried to play, the reality is Baker Mayfield will still be the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns today. I 100% agree. He'd be the starter.
Yeah.
Because he came out and said, look, hey, I'm a little hurt right now. I'm going to just take a little time off. He'd still be the starter.
And on top of that, too, you always had the reports on game day from Jay Glazer, from, other different insiders, the sit down with Kurt Warner that he also had and, on NFL Network. So many times where he came out and said, I'm healthy, despite, having to come back out and say that I was hurt again. But, yeah, I digress when it comes to that. But G. Bush, looking at the defense, and this comes from 33rdteam.com, they gave one reason why for every NFL team to be pessimistic. And this is what they said about the Cleveland Browns, saying that the Browns have an inconsistent defensive line outside of Myles Garrett, saying that Garrett has proven to be one of the most prolific defensive players in the AFC. But since then, they don't have a supporting cast around him at this point. They have Chase Winovich, who they traded for, trade away Mac Wilson, which that's a win in and of itself. They drafted, Perion Winfrey and Isaiah Thomas, but, outside of that, they also signed Taven Bryan as well along the defensive line, but they don't really have any bona fide starters on that defensive line outside of Myles Garrett. What is your concern level when it comes to, the overall defensive line, especially that defensive tackle room that really you've only seen a couple of additions in there when it was really, I don't want to say weak, but, it was depleted going into this offseason.
Well, listen, I feel a lot better about the defensive line if they can sign Clowney. That's it. There's nothing else like that. That's the rest of the offseason. The Browns defense hinges on signing Clowney because if you can sign him, the pick of Winovich looks a lot better, right? I could just move him right to defensive end and say he's going to be the third down, rush end, spot check. We can get creative and move him down and maybe kick Myles Garrett inside to, play and have them outside. He's the Takk McKinley guy. Taven Bryan looks better, right? Because it's like, okay, well, wow, he doesn't have to give us much. We can rotate Perion Winfrey. That's a nice pick. We think he's going to contribute. None of that means anything if you don't get Clowney, because now you're filling holes. And the crazy thing about it, Jarvis I think he signed for $6 million. Reports is that the Browns was going to give him 10. So my thing is, hey, if you was planning on giving Jarvis 10, that means you got some money in your purse, in your pocketbook to give Jadeveon Clowney, right? Because you was planning on giving Jarvis some money, or the offer was still there. So my thing is, they got to get that done. That is a must. That is a must. That's, people talk about the Baker trade. I mean, the Browns can absorb Baker's. If they just said, you know what, $18 million, whatever, we'll absorb that. I mean, they got cap room, but they have to get Jadeveon Clowney, because that changes what we're talking about now. Now you got 2 elite rush-ins. Now you got 3 good corners, 2 good safeties. Now it looks like JOK is going to come back and be one of those guys that, you want him to be in the second round. Everything look better. But then if you don't get Clowney, now I'm looking around like, ooh, we still got Taki playing. He's a special teams guy. Ooh, I don't know. Is Phillips really good? I don't know what Phillips is. See, you can hide more people. And the Browns do have to hide a couple people at linebacker. But you can't do that if now you got the defensive end over there getting double teamed and now, you can't set an edge. No, they need to get him back. That is the biggest move of the offseason, and they got to get that done, like, as of yesterday.
Now, regarding Clowney, Josina Anderson was on the afternoon drive on 923 The Fan yesterday, and she had this to say, and this was from Keith Britton tweeting out, "I do not anticipate him signing soon, but she wouldn't be surprised to see him sign with the Browns." Now, in the interview, she did make sure to say that this was her opinion regarding the Clowney situation. And look, G. Bush, we've seen it happen time and time again where, look, Clowney just doesn't like doing the offseason activities. That's just it. He doesn't like to practice in the offseason. He likes to do his own thing. And last year, showed up, did pretty well opposite of Miles. So do you expect this to get done maybe like right before training camp, as much as I'd love to see him sign tomorrow? But, at this point, do you expect him to just hold off until after mandatory minicamps?
Oh, at this point, God, the veterans, man. See, that's the worst thing you could do. I always watch. So the Browns got a new quarterback, got a new center. They got a new receivers, all that newness, right? See, coaches be extra over the top when you got new people, right? They be trying to set examples. They be trying to do extra drills. Like, they be wanting to run. Like, yeah, we're going to really show these new guys what kind of system that we got. If you're an existing player on the roster, you want no parts of these workouts. I don't want no parts of them. I already know the defense. I don't feel like flipping tires. I don't want to do that. Last year, that was a situation where Clowney's like, hey, I'm going to come in. I'm going to get my reps. Just tell me when it's third down. I don't need – and for defensive linemen, there ain't much of a scheme anyway. I mean, there's only a couple ways you can go. Either I'm going to rush inside or I'm going to rush outside. It's not very much for you to put in. So for him, he's thinking, I could stay at the crib. I could chill out. I could work out with my personal trainer. And I even possibly can come in right before we do the first preseason game. And because I really ain't in shape yet, they might not even play me the first preseason game. So now I could just come in and miss a preseason game too. I'll take it. That's what he on. So I totally feel like either if he was going to sign here or not sign here, he's not signing wherever he's going to sign until close to the season.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you, G. Bush. But G. Bush and I are going to take a timeout. When we come back, is it the talent or is it the scheme? Mac Robinson here on Sports4CLE with G. Bush. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. Now, earlier today, came across this tweet on Twitter from Marcus Mosher, who's been covering the Dallas Cowboys, but an interesting tweet on big plays created by running backs in 2021. As you can see, Nick Chubb, number 1 overall, 248 touches, 43 big plays, 17.3%. Number 2, Rashad Penny, coming in 1.3% lower than that. You see a little bit further down, Dearness Johnson just above of Dalvin Cook in a little bit less than half of those touches, able to get just a little bit higher of a percentage. And right below Dalvin Cook, you see Kareem Hunt there with 13 big plays. And, you know, an interesting look, obviously, Kevin Stefanski's offense, a very run-oriented offense over the last 2 years. And then I came across this other tweet from Tej Seth on Twitter as well with Pro Football Focus, saying the play callers that have added the most in the run game once adjusting for talent on the roster as well as game situation since 2015. Kevin Stefanski, number 2 in the NFL when it comes to that, just behind Greg Roman, obviously offensive coordinator with the Baltimore Ravens, previously with the Buffalo Bills. Now, we bring in G. Bush from 92.3 The Fan, and G. Bush, I want to get your insight on this because obviously, look, I'm not saying Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt aren't talented running backs, but, you know, you look at those 3 being high up there, you know, do you think it's a little bit more of a mix of, you know, the Browns have just done well in scouting these great running backs, or do you think that part of it is the scheme from Kevin Stefanski and being able to scheme these guys to be able to hit those big plays?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I think you do have Kevin Stefanski who does like to run the ball. The cool thing about the Browns is they do a mixture of everything up front. So, you know, they'll do some gap schemes. They'll double team and get up to the next level. They'll pull. They run counter Trey. You know, they get Wyatt Teller out on the edge and he demolishes people. They even run zone. They run stretch. They run so many different variations of run plays. It keeps you off balance a little bit. As a defensive lineman, you know, you don't know what, I don't know if I'm going to try to get reached. I don't know if I'm going to get doubled. Maybe the tight end's going to crack down on me. And so then you run play action off that, and it's very effective. So it keeps your linebackers from flowing downhill. So they do a lot of things. I think they are, and plus they got really good offensive linemen, and they got really a really good offensive line coach in Callahan. So you take a look at what they have up front. They have really good guards in the middle, athletic enough to get on the edge. You know, last year Treader was a guy who was a really solid center. And for the most part, your 2 tackles, Wills and Conklin, they were solid in 2020. That both of them had injuries last year. And, you know, it'll be yet to be seen. I think Wills will come back okay. Conklin, I got a little question mark about. But, you know, they got really good offensive linemen. And then the third thing that really makes it the Browns' run game really go is the fact that all 3 running backs have a different skill set. Like, you know, but they still all have one thing in common. They all run the ball really hard. They really run. They're decisive in when they make a cut. They don't really do too much dancing in the backfield. It's usually get the ball, one cut, move, get downhill. They can all catch the ball on 3rd down. Dearness Johnson and Kareem Hunt would be a little bit better of a pass catcher, but Nick Chubb, he's a good he has good 3rd down hands as well. So you got 3 different guys who with 3 different skill sets, a good offensive line coach, and a coach that likes to run. Now, here's the thing. You watch all those explosive plays. The only problem I have is there's too many times last year when you did have a quarterback who, you know, is injured and a quarterback that was kind of inaccurate, ineffective. Too many times I see Nick Chubb over there with a coat on. Come on, man. He can't have the coat on. No, he shouldn't. If you're getting a big play 17.3% of the time, and you got your other 2 running backs on there at 14 and 10, 11% of the time, every time they touch the ball is a home run, and I need to see more dynamic stuff and creativity with both Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb in the backfield together. If Deshaun Watson is suspended, the way these first games is playing out, they should have about 300, 350 yards apiece in the first 4 games. They should be running the ball, working play action, and they should be good enough to do that.
Now, G. Bush, with all that being said, and the amount of big plays that you're able to see from those guys, you know, I think it begs the question, and I want to just say this first. I want him on the team. I want more talented players on my team, but with the amount of players that you have that are in that upper echelon there, and you just selected Jerome Ford in the 5th round this past year, do you look to possibly trade off of somebody like a Kareem Hunt and try to, create that extra roster space while also, getting back some valuable draft picks that, you really have had depleted since that Deshaun Watson deal?
Depending on what you get. If it's going to be somebody who's a bona fide receiver that is like, okay, I could trade for this guy and keep him under asset, and he's a guy that can grow with the team, I make the move. Because you look at it, I love Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford, to me, is going to make the team. Now, that means who else ain't going to make the team, right? We already got Demetric Felton, who's like a slash player. You already have, Dearness Johnson, which they signed this year. But the only way I trade Kareem Hunt is this: if you're going to get me a receiver that's younger, that gives us what we don't have, and that means vertical ability. That means the ability to stretch the field vertically, and a guy that's young enough that, he can sign the next contract and still be here. Other than that, no, because if Deshaun Watson gets suspended 6 games, we need Kareem Hunt. I mean, because to be honest with you, let's be honest, we run the ball more than any other team. And in the last 2 years, guys have been hurt. The only reason we know Dearness Johnson is good is because Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt have been hurt for long periods of time. So, yeah, no, I'm not giving them up because that might be our identity for 6-8 games, whatever the case may be. So, but I like him a lot. And remember where you heard it here first, too. I was the first one told you Jerome Ford was going to be good. Don't you come back in the middle of next year and talk about, G. Bush, man, that Ford kid is not. No, I told you early he was good. Stop it.
G. Bush and I are going to take a timeout. When we come back, it starts in the trenches, and who could have a breakout in 2022? Mac Robinson here on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. Now, Pro Football Focus, every year they always keep updating, their tier rankings of players, and especially they start with the offensive linemen today, offensive guards, as they had in that top tier, in the elite tier, Zach Martin, Quentin Nelson, obviously top-graded guys. Then you have Joel Bitonio sitting there at 3. So Joel Bitonio in that top tier. In tier number 2, starting it off, you have Wyatt Teller. For the Browns, they're number 1 in tier 2, so just below that tier 1, but not quite elite in that pass protection. So, to bring in and talk about this, we have G. Bush from 92.3 The Fan, Garrett Bush. You guys can follow him on Twitter at GBush91. Now, G. Bush, I got to ask you, when it comes to, I know that you brought up Jedrick Wills last segment as well as Jack Conklin, both dealt with their own injuries. Do you feel like that with Bitonio and with Teller on the inside, with the way that Stefanski likes to call his offense, do you think that gives them a little bit more of a baseline and more of a foundation for them to utilize that offensive line, given the fact that you have such good interior guards on this team?
Well, when you talk about offensive line play, to me, I've always see there's a misconception that your game is set up by your tackles. That's not truthful. Most tackles are not the point of contact guys. Like if you take a look at even Joe Thomas, who's first ballot Hall of Famer, most of the Hall of Famers are in the Hall of Fame for their pass blocking. Go look at him. Anthony Munoz is another guy. They're more tacticians. The only guy that I would consider to be, in my opinion, dominant on pass blocking and running blocking is probably like Orlando Pace. I would say Pace is Jonathan Ogden. I would say is a little bit better of a run blocker than pass blocker. But I mean, you it's hard to be great, and obviously Joe Thomas is definitely he's known for pass protection. That's his forte. But, you know, most of the time you get your movement up at the point of attack from the three guys in the middle. That's why back in the day when you had three techniques, you needed three techniques and a big nose guard over a center so you wouldn't give up them plays in the middle. Nowadays, you don't really see that much. You see more three techniques that are trying to get upfield to disrupt the passer and do certain things like that. For me, I like the way the Browns are built because Jedrick Wills, to me, is more of a run blocker than pass protector. I like the fact that Conklin is more of a run blocker, too. So Botonio is definitely a good in pass pro. Teller is a step below that, I give him. But I had to go check this, and I had to look up on my computer. I said, hold on. I know they're not talking about these guys. Better overall? No. There's a couple of guys up on that last graphic that are not better than Teller because his run blocking is the best. His run blocking is the best in the game. He can get beat from time to time, get holding penalties time to time off an initial quick move and a slap and a rip. But other than that, to me, I think that he's the best run blocker out of the mix, and I think Botonio is really equally good at both. So to me, I like my guards being guys who can really move a pile a little bit, and it works well because especially when you got running backs that like to cut the ball back. They can cut the ball back across the seam, and you got the backside guard moving to the next level. I like the way it's built. My thing is I want to see whether or not Jedrick Wills comes back from that that ankle injury, which has slowed him down. And he had that first game of the season against the Chiefs. And then Conklin, with that whole PCL situation and kneecap situation, it's hard to come back from, really devastating injuries, especially when you're bigger and you're a lineman, you're getting in the stance all the time. So we'll see how that works. But I'm confident in what they can do at those positions and still be able to run the football.
All right, G. Bush, that's going to go ahead and do it for us today. Thank you so much for the time. Always appreciate you coming on, my friend. Always happy to see you, my friend.
All right, man. We'll see you next time, man. Appreciate you, man.
G. Bush, Garrett Bush. You can hear him on the Barbershop every Saturday, 8 a.m. to noon. Make sure you guys follow him on Twitter at GBush91. But when we come back, we're going to be talking with the hardest working man in professional sports. That is Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook from CBS Sports HQ. Talking with him next, right here on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson, and we're going to go out to the voicemail of Truth and Reason because Jarvis Landry obviously ended up going off to the New Orleans Saints. And so this caller is wondering, why didn't the Browns end up bringing back Jarvis Landry?
Hey, this is Randall McKissack, longtime Browns fan, frequent caller. Jarvis Landry signed for $3 million base with $3 million options. So how come you think he didn't get a deal from Cleveland? Was Cleveland trying to lowball him? He was on the books for making 15 with the hit mark. The mark against our ceiling was 16. So was Cleveland trying to restructure him below $3 million, and that's why he turned it down? Do you think he got a low ball, or do you think he turned down a good deal from Cleveland and had to, save face and accept a bad deal from New Orleans? I'm just curious, what was the actual numbers that he turned down from Cleveland, and did Cleveland give him a decent offer that he turned down? I'll stand by to listen to your comments. Thanks. Bye.
And thank you so much for the call. We appreciate it. As always, you guys can go ahead, call and leave your voicemails with us as always. But in order to break that down and break down why Jarvis Landry ended up leaving Cleveland, let's go ahead and bring in one of the hardest working men in football, especially. We got Emory Hunt, czar of the playbook from CBS Sports HQ. Emory, thanks for joining me. And, when it comes to Jarvis Landry, he ends up moving on. He ends up going to New Orleans. I feel like it was just time for the Browns and Jarvis Landry to kind of go their separate ways at this point.
Yeah, it may have been more so wanting to move on to another team and just get a different shake up to the system, so to speak. And I feel like that's what happened with Jarvis Landry, which is why he ended up in New Orleans.
Yeah, and Emory, one of the big reasons why I think that the Browns were comfortable letting Landry end up leaving is one of the big players that they were able to draft this year at number 99 overall, that being David Bell out of Purdue. And Bleacher Report put out an article earlier today calling him one of the big surprise candidates that could be an impact rookie, saying that the Browns, they don't have much depth behind Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones there, so it seems like he could carve out a role. Now, Emory, I know that you have a massive draft guide. I bought it myself, and I highly recommend those of you guys to go ahead and check it out as always. But, Emory, when it comes to David Bell, what were your thoughts for him? And two, how do you think that he kind of fits into this Cleveland offense with Watson or whoever be a quarterback?
He fits in perfectly. He is someone that's probably favorable to what they have in Donovan Peoples-Jones. Tracks the ball very well, going deep down the field. Very good run after the catch type player, able to get himself in position consistently to make the catch at the highest point. So I feel like he's going to be solid in terms of what he can bring to the table. And, he's not going to be the deep threat burner guy, but he's someone that can create the chunk play because of his skill set that I just outlined.
Yeah, and I think that one of the biggest things that Andrew Berry has really accentuated, and not just Andrew Berry, but, Kevin Stefanski, among others, they've really accentuated the separation aspect when it comes to the receiving position. And, you fire up the highlight tape, you fire up the tape of David Bell, and you can constantly see, despite the fact that he ran a 4.65 40, he really was able to create separation between him and the defender. So I feel like that could also really help carve out that role early on for him as well.
Route running is mostly about quickness and ability to identify and attack angles, which is why you saw someone like a Jarvis Landry, which is why you see someone like a David Bell get open. What people really have to understand, and you can ask any cornerback this, one of the hardest guys to cover is a slower wide receiver because they're so precise in their route running, and route running is everything in terms of creating separations. Fast guys are going to be fast guys, and all you have to do is just get on your horse and just run with them. But they're not normally the more precise route runners. But guys that are speed deficient are able to focus in on getting open, which is why they tend to be a little bit better in terms of running their routes.
Now, obviously, David Bell went in round 3, but a couple of names that have really been catching Browns fans' eyes. Michael Woods was selected out of Oklahoma later on in the draft in the 6th round by the Cleveland Browns, and another one that was signed by them via free agency was Isaiah Weston from Northern Iowa. What were your two thoughts on Woods and Weston? And I understand the Browns have a deep roster, but what kind of chances do you kind of give them going into this season as well to make the roster for the Browns?
Well, Woods is another one of these terrific route runners because of his speed. He's able to really sink his hips and get in and out of his break. Weston is someone that I'm very high on. I feel like he's able to play on the outside. He can get deep down the field. He has very good acceleration in terms of running your takeoff routes, your post routes. He can really track the ball and accelerate toward the ball to close on it. Coming out of his break on shorter in-breaking routes, he needs a little bit more refinement. But I was at the NFLPA game out in Pasadena and watched him do work all throughout the week of work at the practices. And I was shocked that he went undrafted, but landed in a really good spot in Cleveland where he has a great chance to make an impact. Like you said, they do have some questionable depth there. So there's an opportunity for both he and Woods to really make the roster and also make an impact year one.
Now, Emory, I always love keeping an eye out for, how teams construct their rosters and how do they go ahead and, add different talent at different positions. Now, I've seen people say, possibly add a veteran receiver for the Cleveland Browns. You still have, Will Fuller or Julio Jones that are still sitting out there in free agency. If you're the Cleveland Browns, do you go ahead and maybe sign another veteran receiver, or do you possibly try to keep on some of these guys like a Michael Woods or like an Isaiah Weston in that wide receiver room, or do you add that veteran presence?
It depends on how fast these guys come along in terms of picking up the playbook, getting apt to the NFL speed. That's a way for teams to really gauge whether or not they should go get a veteran to help them right away. But they do have the luxury of having 3 legit wide receivers right now. 4, Anthony Schwartz, I think, is ready to take a big step this year. They also have a bevy of tight ends. I would also keep an eye out for Zaire Mitchell-Payton out of Florida Atlantic, who was formerly of Notre Dame College out there in Ohio. He was killing the Division II prospects in that conference all throughout his career there before going to FAU and playing really well. So you already have an FAU tight end on the roster. You get another one here in Zaire Mitchell-Payton. But I feel like you want to see what these rookies can do. You don't want to stockpile veterans because you're hindering these young guys' ability to improve, get better, get acclimated to the system. So you want to give them every opportunity to show that they belong and that they can help you out before going to break in case of emergency, which would be the veteran option.
Emory Hunt of Football Game Plan and CBS Sports HQ. We're going to take a timeout. When we come back, going to look at the running back room and a couple of guys that the Browns added, as well as who could have a big breakout in 2022. Stay with us right here on Sports4CLE.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Thanks for buying a fishing license. I want you to picture all of the great things this simple purchase does. Like building public boat ramps, keeping local waters clean, and maintaining a healthy fish population.
What's Mom doing?
When you buy a fishing license, you do a lot. Every dollar protects and maintains your local waterways for future generations to enjoy. Visit takemefishing.org.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. Now, the Cleveland Browns obviously already have a bunch of talented running backs, whether it be Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Dearness Johnson, but they added in one more in the draft in round 5, selecting Jerome Ford out of Cincinnati. In order to break him down, we're going to go ahead and bring in Emory Hunt of Football Game Plan. You guys got to go check out his draft guide. Does great stuff with that as always. And, I've checked it out myself. Over 1,000 prospects, 1,000 pages. It's a lot, but it's fantastic. You're not going to get better information. And Emory, your thoughts on Jerome Ford and, how he kind of fits into that Cleveland Browns running back room and running back scheme.
To come out in this draft class, he's someone that doesn't need volume. So he fits in perfectly because your volume is going to go to Nick Chubb. Your volume is going to go to Kareem Hunt. So you need someone that can step in and thrive without volume, and that's Jerome Ford. He can also help you out as a kickoff returner. Because of his straight line speed and explosiveness, that gives you an added benefit there. So for me, this was more along the lines of, okay, if they're going to move on from Hunt a year or two from now, really puts a lot of pressure on Dearness Johnson to keep his game tight because Ford would be right there waiting in the wings.
Now, with that being said, too, obviously, like I mentioned, a lot of talent in that running back room. I know you played at Louisiana Lafayette, so I know I got to get your input when it comes to these running backs. How do you kind of balance all of that talent in that room? And I haven't even mentioned, Demetric Felton, who's switching more from that slot wide receiver role into that running back room.
You have to look at it like this. I will always run the running back room in terms of how you divvy up the opportunities for your starter and reserves. 2-1-2. So your starter gets 2 series, your top reserve gets a series, and you go back to your starter for 2, and then maybe you sprinkle in situationally those other guys. So you don't want to get away from the guy that you want to dance who you brought to the party, and that's Kareem Hunt, that's Nick Chubb. Keep those 2 guys at the forefront, but you're going to have to find ways to situationally get Jerome Ford in the mix, get Dearness Johnson in the mix, and Felton as well. So you still have to maintain that 2-1-2 with Hunt and Chubb being the bulk of the run game. So I know it sounds creative to get a lot of guys involved, but in a game situation, you really want to run with your horses. You don't have that luxury unless you're in a blowout situation. But for the most part, your primary ball carriers and guys that are going to touch the rock are going to be Chubb and Hunt. Then you find situations to maybe sneak Ford or Johnson in there. That's why special teams is going to be key for all 3, Johnson, Ford, and also Felton.
Now, the Browns on offense are going to have a lot of different mouths to feed, obviously a lot of talented players around there, but one being David Njoku. And I saw this article from ESPN earlier today where they talked about, contract updates and players who could get a long-term deal. David Njoku, obviously franchise tagged. And in addition to that as well, PFF Fantasy Football had this tweet as well, showing off who could be a breakout tight end, whether it be Pat Freiermuth, Albert O out in Denver. You got Cole Kmet, Mike Gesicki in Miami, as well as Irv Smith Jr. in Minnesota. But David Njoku there on the bottom, I think he could have a big breakout year. So, Emory, with that in mind, in your mind, would you go ahead, would you pay David Njoku before the year and before that possible breakout, or do you wait and have him play out on the franchise tag and then give him that deal after the year if he possibly breaks out during the season?
I feel like he's been on the breakout list for his entire career. So at this point, you got to wait and see if he breaks out and then pony up, because you do have depth at tight end. You like the player. Obviously, they love him around the facility because he seems to be a great dude, and you want to see him earn it and get paid. But there's no rush to do that right now, especially at that position. So for me, it probably would be just wait and see if he breaks out this year in year 6. And then, then you go about paying him then because he checks all the boxes from an athleticism standpoint, but you got to see it on the field consistently. And if that happens, then yeah, definitely pay him what he's worth.
Now, one signing that came in just a little bit ago, the Cleveland Browns ended up signing Parnell Motley. I know you were a big fan of him coming out in the 2020 draft. For those Browns fans who aren't familiar with him, I know he's an Oklahoma grad, so we're pretty much sticking on cue at this point throughout this offseason. But, what were your thoughts on Motley coming out, and what do you think the Browns are getting in Motley coming into Cleveland?
I feel like he has great fluidity. He has excellent ball skills and ball awareness, so he can play the ball. He can make plays on the ball and doesn't miss opportunities of turning the ball over. Now, in order to bring in Motley, they did let go one guy that I was very high on, Julius Falk out of Delta State, the undrafted rookie free agent. But you're getting someone that has NFL experience, that has played a lot of football, but also has good football skills and awareness that can help you right now in that depth chart.
Now, 2 other players. I know we already talked about David Bell in the 3rd round. They made 2 more 3rd-round picks. Obviously, Martin Emerson out of Mississippi State. He was their top overall draft pick. Alex Wright out of UAB. He was selected at 78 overall. So what were your thoughts on Emerson and Wright and how they kind of fit here in Cleveland?
Emerson is probably one of the better zone corners in the class. So I love his ability in zone. The communication is always where it needs to be. He has great length at the position. And if you're able to get pressure up front, that length on the back end really causes a problem for a quarterback. Wright has good length as well. Is comfortable playing out in space, so you can drop him back into short zone coverage. He has a length to really cause a problem up front. You want to see him use his hands a little bit better, but you understand why both guys were key targets for Cleveland because of the length, because of, for Emerson, the communication and his ability in zone. And you can kind of see where they're going with their philosophy this season.
Emory Hunt, Football Game Plan, one of the best draft guides you guys can buy out there. Even now, they have plenty of undrafted free agents. Go ahead, check it out, buy it today. Emory, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. Appreciate the time.
Thanks as always. Appreciate you having me on.
Of course, and Emory Hunt, make sure you guys follow him on Twitter at FBallGamePlan. And that's going to do it for us today here at Sports4CLE. Coming up tomorrow, Quincy Carrier once again coming on, as well as Sam Monson of Pro Football Focus. That's going to do it for us today here at Sports4CLE. Have a good one, Cleveland.